Town of Monroe Planning Board meeting. I'd like to start with a roll call. I'll take the roll call. Jeff? Here. Pat?
Here.
Dylan?
Here.
That's about it. And with that, we have a quorum, and we can conduct business. Before I get started, just want to point out the fire exits. 2 double doors behind you take you right out to the patio. Through the door on my left will take you out the front entrance of the building. Through the door on my right will take you out into the left and out onto a porch and down the steps out there. If I can ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Our first project for tonight is 81 Raywood. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Warner. I'm an attorney from the law firms Aaron and Steinmetz on behalf of the applicant in this matter for 81 Raywood. We're here tonight seeking a referral to the ZBA for the lot coverage, and it appears based on the town board's most recent comments also for the parking area in the front yard. We were last here before your board a month ago addressing the town's technical comments, specifically the most substantial of which we believe have been resolved already. Last time at issue was whether the home was considered a rear dwelling, and I believe we were waiting for the building inspector's determination upon that. I haven't received the determination, but what I hear is that he did make a determination that it was not considered a rear dwelling. Again,
Sorry to interrupt. I can just confirm that for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, we're seeking referral to the ZBA tonight for the lot coverage and also for the parking. The applicant wants to try to avoid going to the ZBA if possible, so I'm not sure if you guys received the sketch plans that we submitted. You did? Okay, great.
Yeah,
So,
I have those on the monitor as well.
oh, perfect. So we submitted those for discussion purposes. They made several changes compared to the last site plan that the applicant hopes would obviate the need for the lot coverage variance, although based on the most recent technical review comments, I think we may have to readdress those things, but we still would like the referral to the ZBA for those items. But just to go over the changes to get the board's opinion on those things, first, the applicant. So the applicant removed the turnaround in the parking area to decrease lot coverage. We were unable to find anything in your zoning code that required a turnaround for parking, but I see on the technical review comments here that parking areas are not permitted in the front yard without a variance. So again, with the ZBA referral tonight, we would also respectfully request that referral. In addition, the applicant removed the pervious pavers and replaced them with stepstones for the pathway. Both of these changes would bring the lot area coverage to, as the applicant calculated it, around 32%, but I see that there might be some discrepancy, which we will clear up if it's 32 or 36. You may note that even using the applicant's calculations that we would still be over the above lot coverage, the applicant would then decrease the building footprint by whatever percentage to avoid having to seek a variance for the lot coverage. So we wanted to bring this to your attention here for discussion to get your thoughts about those things, not considering the additional items raised by the technical comments.
Thank you. Ron?
Warner basically covered all my comments from my memo this evening. Essentially, I think it's a determination for the ZBA which variances they want to grant, either a higher lot coverage variance or two variances, a lower lot coverage variance and parking in the front yard. You know, I don't think there's much for the board to discuss. I think at this point you could refer to the ZBA unless it actually has any objections to that, so.
If the applicant decreased the footprint of the building and they move the parking out of the front yard, that's where we might be able to avoid variances altogether?
Altogether, correct.
I mean, if I remember the topography there on the site, getting the parking out of away from the curb is going to be tough on that lot.
Going to require additional,
Yeah, certainly that. But if the applicant was able to come back to us with proposals for that, would they be able to avoid a variance in that case? Needing a variance.
sorry, can you clarify the question?
If the applicant were to come back to us with a smaller footprint of the building and a way to do the parking outside of the front yard setback, which in the sketch plan, Mr. Warner, the dotted line represents the setbacks in the front yard?
So there was two sketch plans submitted. One did show the parking complying with the outside of the front yard setback, but that one did also have a lot coverage of 44%. So I don't know whether the applicant would be looking to reduce the building size in that scenario.
Okay, I'll have to check with the applicant about that, but just to clarify so that I'm on the same page, because
And the mic.
okay. From the previous site plan, the parking area was set back a little bit. There was like a leadway. Would that obviate the need for having a variance for parking in the front if there was enough leeway to get the actual spots out of the front yard?
Yes.
Okay.
The driveway, the access to the spots can be in the front yard, but the spots themselves cannot.
Okay.
That's going to further reduce the size of your building footprint.
Right. So we would consider that before the ZBA, or if we were to come back before your board with additional changes. But we would still like the referral to the ZBA nonetheless for both of those items.
Actually, I'm assuming that that's not an issue. We can make the referral to the
So they could-
ZBA.
that way they could
and-
choose
or
to
the-
go.
And then the applicant has two paths, and they can choose which one to pursue. Your comments, Ashley?
My only comment would be, is a type 2 action under secret? I don't recall. Not, so. Specify the action as type.
Pat, Dylan, any questions?
And for me.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we classify this project as a type 2 action under seeker. May I have a second?
Second.
We'll do a roll call. Jeff, aye.
Bat, aye.
Dylan, aye.
Thank you.
For the applicant to ZBA for potential variances for lot coverage and parking in the front yard.
So moved.
And I'll second that motion. Jeff, aye.
Bat, aye.
Dylan, aye.
Are there any other questions that you have for us this evening, or that kind of
None at the moment.
gives you
Thank
the options you need?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Ashley, we're still prepared to discuss Eagle View tonight? So if you can just take us through the issue there, please.
This subdivision application was conditionally approved September 17th of 2024, so they have 180 days to satisfy all of their conditions. They are really nearing the end of that. We were finalizing some of the agreements that are required, getting the language in order, and I believe most of them, I don't think Sean's done his sign, going to be in. So currently, the subdivision approval does expire March 16th, so it would be appropriate to grant a motion to extend the conditional subdivision approval for 90 days to June 14th, 2025, which would be more than enough time to work out those remaining issues.
Sean, any comments in relation to that?
No, the applicant is diligently working on addressing all the comments, so in my opinion, it's warranted.
What's the date we're talking about extending it through?
14th.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we extend the approval for Eagle View out to June 14th, 2025. I have a second.
Second.
Jeff, aye.
Bat, aye.
Dylan, aye.
Next application is going to be Superior Contract Packing. Let's see.
Good evening. John First of Catania Man and Ryder, attorneys for the applicant. Fortunately, the engineers couldn't make it tonight, so you're stuck with me. We were last here in January of 2025. Generally, what we're trying to seek here is some type of conceptual approval with respect to our request for a variable buffer under your wetland regulations. Your regulations, you regulate wetlands, and you do have a buffer, but it's, as per the definition, it's a variable buffer. It's generally 100 feet, could be more, could be less. That's right out of your code. So there is the ability to have some flexibility. We had a discussion in January after we submitted some information in December. I think there was some more information that was requested by the board members and your consultants. So we had a follow-up submission in February talking about some enhanced stormwater provisions to help kind of mitigate any potential impacts to doing some work in the wetland buffer. We also provided some additional maps to help you have some more information before you. So we believe there's enough information here for at least to give us some type of indication of you know, if the board is okay with what we're proposing, then we can kind of go and get into the weeds of the project site itself with the traffic, the lighting, specifics on the landscaping, and specifics on the stormwater, obviously. So obviously we're here for some questions. I did get just got some comments from your engineer. I guess I'll let him address them, and if I could respond when he's done.
That'd be great. Sean?
Sure. So, as John had mentioned, the applicant did address many of the comments that the board had last time. Notably, they were more or less defining what how wide the buffer would be and trying to increase that as much as possible on the undisturbed areas of the site. I had some additional comments, not that they're going to drastically affect the buffer, but some pointers to potentially increase it. On the sheet that Jeff has pulled up right now, it looks like some additional area, again, not a very large amount of area, but between the proposed dry swale, which is the like 3-line type between the driveway and the green, that the applicant could potentially move the buffer over and preserve that area as well. Additionally, on the other side of the wetland, there's kind of a pocket where there's no buffer proposed that is required to have buffer, but as of right now is not counted towards the buffer that's being will be protected in the future.
You're talking about the pocket between the wetland and the townhouses?
The neighboring property?
Correct, yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's all buffered. That's going to be protected regardless of whether we seek a variable buffer or not. So that's
Understood.
why we didn't include it.
I'm offering it as
We
a.
could show it on the map.
Exactly,
Sure.
right. What else?
That was,
So-
I'm sorry, Sean. That was
Go
the
ahead.
area that, in the mitigation plan would be, that area, that pocket would be turned into additional wetland
Well,
if
so
we needed to do.
That was one of the
it
options,
was-
but I think
Right.
our wetlands consultant, in discussion with your wetlands consultant, said it didn't really make sense to go through to disturb a wetland to get to an area to create a
More
wetland.
wetlands, yeah. That was my understanding from the
So
report.
we
Okay.
kind of, I think both wetland consultants agreed that that probably wasn't a good, and just leave it be as a buffer. We don't plan on touching it.
Additionally, the dry swell I was referring to earlier, which is that 3-weighted line between the driveway and the green buffer area, the limits of disturbance in order to create that are not shown, so that should be shown so we can confirm that the buffer is truly where they're saying it is along that side. I will note that they did provide a detail for the width of that, but we need to confirm that the grading should not be in the buffer and therefore should be shown to confirm that it's not in the buffer. Additionally, last time the board had discussed potentially adding noise mitigation from the truck delivery area and loading dock to protect noise from the neighbors to the, I think that's to the west, in the condos. To that end, the disturbance for whatever noise mitigation the applicant selects is not shown on there, which could potentially impact the buffer. One more procedural item with regards to wetlands. The applicant submitted an email from Mike Fratz from New York State DEC, dated December 7th of 2023, stating that they would not, meaning the DEC would not take jurisdiction of that wetland. However, since then, the DEC wetland regulations have changed in January of this year. So I think that the applicant should submit a jurisdictional determination to the DEC to find out will they take jurisdiction at this time.
Correct. And to answer that question, the applicant did submit, and I thought the copy of the email or letter was in this package.
It was referred to as that, but it was
Correct.
the email from December 7th, 2023.
Yes, so recently, within the last 3 weeks, or since the last meeting, we have reached out again to the DEC to ask for that jurisdictional letter. I understand it takes 60 days or something
90
like that.
days.
90 days. So I think the purpose of that letter, and our wetland consultant went through the analysis, the new analysis under the new regulations, and they feel like it's not a wetland of unusual importance, but obviously that's up to the DEC to decide. He did include that prior letter just to show that, the DEC was out there in the past, and that is one of the factors that they consider is, was this mapped or did we have an interest in this previously? It was only shown for informational purposes. We know that we have to reach out again. We submitted, I'd say, about 30 days ago off the top of my head. Could be, maybe it was 20 days ago, so we know that we have some more time before we hear back from them. But we did initiate that process and
Okay.
reach back out. And I apologize if that referral was not in this packet. I thought it was. With respect to the noise question, I just, as part of the existing approvals at the site, so as you all know, this property is also located in the village of Harriman. So we had done some work in the village, just on the village portion of this property, I'm going to say before COVID, so probably like 5 or 6 years ago. That's how everything is timed these days, pre-COVID, post-COVID. I would say 2018, 2019. We did some work on the parking lot side of the existing building, and I was looking at the approved site plans. There are specific notes with respect to noise, limiting the shipping and receiving operations to certain hours, limiting the use of there's like a compactor or something like that. So there are noise limitations within the Harriman's existing site plan approval, and I'm assuming Harriman's probably wants that to carry over on this if it's improved. So, I'm assuming the town of Monroe would also have similar limitations with, to help on the noise impacts. I'm not sure, like you kind of describe about additional mitigation. What type, would be plantings or something? Is that your concern?
So appreciate the restriction on hours of operations. Currently, the loading docks face away from those townhomes. In this iteration, the loading docks face the townhomes, and that's where all the noise is generated, the backup beepers, the noise when the truck slams against the dock, and the loading of the trucks.
Right. So
I'm not going to suggest any noise mitigations. I think that's for you and your engineer to suggest some mitigations to that end. I will say I have seen as much as 16-foot high sound walls where there's padded insulation placed on fencing in order to absorb noise to shield the noise from reaching the townhomes. So,
well, I mean, there is an extensive wetland in between the two. So, but we'll look into it. There's quite a distance as well, and again, the hours of operation will be limited, whether it's the front side or the back side. I believe there's no shipping or receiving between 7 p.m. at night and 7 in the morning. I think that's the current restriction, and I'm assuming that will carry over on both the front and back side.
I'm not suggesting you have to have any mitigation. I'm saying
Right.
it was discussed last time. So however the board wants to handle the noise is up to you
Right.
guys.
What's the nature of the existing wetlands and proposed buffer area now? Is it generally wooded? Is it open field?
A little of both.
Open field closer to the building and,
Correct.
well, where the extension is going to be.
Correct.
Right, it's kind of hard to envision from knowing the property, how much of that open field area is going to be taken up by the building and the road and the parking before you get to the treat area.
Right.
So I didn't know if it was going to require a lot of tree removal as part of this.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head either, but even whatever we remove, there's still going to be a significant amount of trees that are going to remain and to provide that buffer to the neighbors, which I think there's quite a distance to the nearest home. But we'll certainly look into any other mitigation measures besides restricting the hours of operation.
Sean, based on what you've looked at in the plans on the proposed dry swell, and the fact that the road is a 2% grade angled towards the wetlands, will the dry swell and what's being proposed there be effective in protecting the wetlands and the buffer?
So they'll have to provide calculations to that end. My understanding based on, forgive me, I forget the gentleman's name that was here from Barton and LaJudas, said that they're going to treat 150% of the water quality volume, which when they disturb over an acre, they're only required to treat 100%. So they're offering to treat 50% more than what's required.
Right, and that's, allowing us to do a little disturbance in the wetland. We're offering enhanced stormwater services, mitigation, or whatever you engineers call it, sorry. We know the details of that have to be kind of worked out. I think Tom's idea was just to kind of give you some ideas. He did some rough calculations and kind of did a little bit here and there, but, obviously you don't get too far in the weeds if this is something that's not going to fly,
Right.
then it's, you know, you don't want to spend a lot of time and money on something that's not worth it. But, you know, again, once we get the go-ahead, like, okay, we're okay with this variable buffer, obviously, we're going to have to work out the details with stormwater as well as everything else.
And just to clarify something you said, in relation, you mentioned disturbance of the wetlands. There's actually not disturbance of the wetlands proposed, the buffer. Okay. I just want to make sure that my understanding was correct. Ashley?
Nothing really new for me. Applicants just look for direction from the board about, you know, this concept. Obviously, it's still being tweaked and developed. There might be more disturbance or perhaps more buffer, but I think they're really just looking for direction. You wouldn't be, you know, formally approving any type of variable buffer because that isn't, you know, settled yet what it actually will be, but if the board's comfortable with this concept.
Dylan, your thoughts?
I don't have any. Thank you.
Pat?
So we're lead on this, correct?
No.
Actually, the Village of Merriman Planning Board is the agency. I don't believe they've been back since.
No, we're kind of waiting
think
to
they're
work
trying to
this issue
settle
out with the
this issue.
wetland buffer. And fortunately, we've been bogged down on this issue for too long, no fault of your own. We haven't been back to Harriman because obviously we were waiting for some input from the town of Monroe.
So I guess we're a little limited as to what we could do anyway, right?
Well, that's in terms of the seeker review. So they're the lead agency. You did, when you responded or consented, ask that they coordinate with you in terms of their seeker review before making any determinations. But this question of the buffer, that's solely for this board
Solely for
to
us,
decide. They would consider, you know, the impacts under seeker, but as far as this concept itself would be for this board to.
I have no other questions.
So a couple of things as I remember. What's being proposed in the variable buffer is actually slightly more square footage, maybe another 1,000-ish feet on
think-
top of what would have been if we had preserved 100
I
feet.
believe so. I don't know the calculation off the top of my head, but if it's very close, if not slightly more.
I remember it being slightly more.
It's, from what I
Similar.
recall, it's about 20% max difference.
Right. And from the review that I read, our wetlands consultant was one of the people that came up with this concept of the variable buffer and gives it his recommendation as well as the applicants.
That's correct, yep.
Yeah, as opposed to disturbing the existing wetlands to create new wetlands in that pocket, yes.
John and Ashley, any concerns that you have about this variable wetlands buffer? Is it in keeping with the code, and is it in keeping with the logic of protecting the wetlands, I guess?
In my opinion, it makes perfect sense.
Yes, so your code, as John had mentioned earlier, it does provide in the definition of wetland buffer that it's generally 100 feet horizontally away from and parallel to the wetland boundary, but can be greater or less than the 100 feet when designated by the approval authority based upon site-specific conditions relating to topography, slopes, soils, et cetera. So they had submitted previously a narrative giving their analysis of why they felt they met that standard, which would allow the board, if you agree, to modify it.
I just want to make sure that that agreed with your interpretation of the law. Thank you. Based on that and the site-specific conditions and, you know, what the applicant is proposing in, you know, stormwater mitigation, I think this is actually the best plan to preserve the buffer and, you know, I'm also sensitive to the fact of wanting to locate the road in a way where the intersection is at the best place for the trucks to turn in with sight distances and safety and keeping those turns as far away from the homes as possible. So for those reasons, I would suggest that conceptually the wetlands buffer makes sense to me. Thoughts?
I agree.
All right, so I mean, I think we can comfortably say at this point that
Fantastic.
we're in agreement with this in concept.
Correct.
And now it's just a matter of working out the fine details.
Sure.
To demonstrate what you're suggesting you can do, you're going to do.
Thank you. And just, you mentioned the road and the access. I think they left a little bit of wiggle room. They didn't bring the buffer all the way to the swale because they weren't sure if they needed to maybe slightly move the access depending on site distances. If we can bring it as close as possible to the building, we'll do that. But they did want to provide a little wiggle room.
Weren't overselling the buffer.
What's that?
You weren't overselling the revised buffer.
No. But, all right, well, thank
So,
you very much.
so am I understanding what you're suggesting, that if indeed the road were to go in where it's on these plans here, that you'd actually be able to extend that portion of the wetlands
Yeah,
buffer
I don't think
closer to the swale?
I don't think it's very much space, but yeah, I don't see why not? It's not going to be usable anyway. Between the swale and the buffer at that point is, I don't know, 10 feet, if that, 5 feet. I don't know.
Whatever it is, if possible, I too would vote that we protect as much as possible, as close as possible, grading dependent to the swale.
Right.
That would be my preference.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next application is 18 Stairway.
Hi, good evening. David Higgins from Lankentelli Engineering and Surveying. And would you like me to give a brief rundown of the project? Okay, so I believe this project was presented to the board, I think it was January of '24. At that time, I believe your council had advised that the application, which is for a contractor landscape storage yard, this is to be built. Actually, it's already built, is the garage that's being converted for that use behind the existing masterclass shooting range. But that your council advised that at that time that use was not permitted in the district that this property is in, which is the GB district. As a result, we had two options. One was to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to seek a variance for that use, or to go to the town board to have to request that the zone be changed to allow that use in the district. So we spent a number of months in last year going to the town board, and ultimately they did grant that petition. So there is now a section in the code that allows this in the GB district. There are some criteria that apply to building or landscape material storage. That's section 57-13V. We've noted those conditions on the plan. I just received the comments from your engineer, and I know there was some questions with regards to that criteria. I believe that we do meet most of those. We can go through those. But that's sort of the backdrop of where we are. So we are seeking amended site plan approval to allow the use of the existing building that's behind the masterclass shooters range for use as a landscape storage.
Thank you. On?
So Dave summarized it very well. The town board added this use into this zone to allow these types of businesses. And the town board gave you the special use permit criteria so that you could, potentially regulate should you find any, or potentially regulate it more than just a permitted use. So as David mentioned, 5613V is the specific conditions that have to be met in order to grant the special use permit. Some of those conditions require screening from public vantage points, specifically in this instance, 17M. I believe, but the applicant should confirm and the board should confirm that I think the site is elevated enough and there's plenty of vegetation along the frontage of this that it's screened sufficiently from 17M. So the heavy equipment storage has to be placed over a paved or concrete surface pursuant to those regulations in the town code. I just ask that that be, if that's the case, that has to be noted on the plans. And what else? Additionally, any compost, manure, organic material has to be stored 100 feet from any existing lot line. It looks like that is met, but we should note that on the plans if there's, or move those if there's any within that 100-foot setback.
Is that just related to organic material? Is that what you had indicated?
So it says in the code, anything that contains compost, manure, mulch, or other organic material or chemical within 100 feet of the existing lot line.
Okay. I'm pretty sure they do not store that, but I'll confirm with the applicant and note that on the plan if that's the case.
Okay.
That was a question I had. Is there outdoor storage of any equipment or materials, or is it everything was just in the
I
building?
think it was interior, but
Okay.
yeah, I'll confirm.
With regards to access, there's an easement over the adjoiner that this property gets access from via common driveway. There's a couple easement notes that have to be cleaned up on the plans. Same thing with the bulk table that was provided. I didn't note any dimensions that would require a variance, but just a couple cleanup items on that. With regards to the existing septic system that's shown, it looked like there might be a proposed driveway improvement or existing driveway improvement that's over top of that septic system. So I just asked Dave to look at that to see if there's any issues there. And that was really discuss need for county planning referral with Ashley and as well as seeker.
Ashley?
Related to those last two items, your seeker classification and also your county referral depend on whether it's strictly the reuse of this existing building or if there's going to be any outdoor storage of any kind or materials or equipment. So I think we'll need to wait to confirm that before you could make a classification or a determination on the referral. I did have just a few comments. So back to the special use permit criteria, there's the general standards in 5712 and then the specific ones that we were discussing earlier. If you could submit a narrative going through both the general and the specific, demonstrating how you meet all of those. The property is adjacent to a residential district, so some of the specific special use permit criteria discuss use adjacent to, so if there are additional setbacks or anything like that, make sure those are shown. The parking table, I didn't see any additional parking outside of the masterclass shooting parking. I know there's not something that I saw in the parking, the town's parking requirements that would clearly apply, but when it's not something shown, then there is supposed to be something that's the closest. So I think just to show a parking calculation for both uses. And we talked about the easement, some of that cleanup item, and then the applicant did submit some of the revised project forms because there's an LLC that owns the property. There was a couple. I didn't see an actual revised application or owner's endorsement from the LLC. I saw the entity disclosure and some other things, but you know what's,
Okay.
or we have all.
Yep, okay.
I had an opportunity to get on site earlier this evening just to take a look. I mean, I've been up by Master Class a few times, so I had a little familiarity, but, just reviewing what's there. A few pickup trucks. There's what looks to be a heavy dump truck with a equipment trailer behind it to, possibly carry a bulldozer or a backhoe. In the paved area, what's labeled paved area, top left with the little retaining wall, a few snowplow blades, a pickup truck. There were a couple of other pickup trucks on the site, a small bulldozer. I didn't see much in the way of materials. There were some paving stones past where the carport is, up on that little hill, and it didn't really appear to be any other materials being stored at this time. I do think that the tree clearing goes a little bit further up onto that hill at the top of the property where it flattens out. It seems to be somewhat clear to trees up there because I did get my car up that far. But, you know, I didn't have the plans in front of me when I was doing this. Oops, I forgot to plug in. Overall, what I observed was very consistent with what we're being told the use is and that sort of thing. I think the only thing that might need to be addressed is the requirement that heavy equipment over 1 ton has to be on a concrete pad or otherwise impervious surface. So I would just suggest that we look at that. I did look at screening. Pardon me. I looked at screening, and from 17M, the project site is invisible because of the trees and the topography. Coming down 17, you didn't see any of that at all until you're really right in front of it. Coming home on the highway on 17, you can see the 1-story building. It's a green building from the highway, probably only because we're in leaf-off condition. It's not well sighted. I know there was also the thought about whether there'd be any issue with the site being seen from the housing to the south. And again, from topography and having seen the final plans for Smith Farm, which will be the closest residential, I don't see how that's possible based on the landforms. So that's what I observed. Again, it seemed consistent with what is being proposed in what I saw. Dylan, any comments?
No comment other than you stated.
Pat, questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
So Ashley, what would be our next steps?
I don't think there's any action for you to take this evening. I think we just need to clarify some things before you could make your seeker determination and whether it needs to go to the
What would necessitate it needing to go to the county in this case?
The county has an exemption under your agreement if it's the reuse of existing structure for that it meets conditions, suitable access, and that the intensity of use doesn't significantly increase traffic or demands on nearby state or county roads, or new site lighting, if proposed, utilizes full cutoff and does not exceed the IEA recommended lighting levels. I don't believe there's any new lighting proposed.
No.
I think the main thing is whether it's limited to reusing an existing structure, if the use is going to be, storing things outside, it doesn't fit squarely in this exemption, in which case I would say it has to be.
Okay, so we need a little bit more information before we get to that point.
I think you had noted there were some things, some equipment stored outside to just label, show if there are things that are going to be stored, what they are, just outside. Also the
Main 1-story building towards the front of that portion of the property. Is there office space in there, or is it strictly storage?
Which building are you talking about?
The 1-story building.
That's the Master Class Shooter building, correct?
The one behind Master Class and behind the gravel drive. There's a small patio and a paved apron
Yes,
adjacent to that?
That is the building that they're planning on using for equipment storage.
Okay. That's what it looked like it would be, but just want to be sure. I have no further questions or comments. Anything else we can provide guidance on or information this evening?
The application does require a public hearing since it's a special use permit. So I know you have some things that need to be submitted, but whether you want to think about potentially scheduling that, if they're going to be able to make a submission of what's needed for the next meeting. Or
What's the feeling of the board on scheduling a public hearing? Get a little more information on the project just to finalize some of these details, or can we do that concurrently?
I'm okay with it concurrently. What was missing again?
I'd asked for a special use permit narrative going through those criteria that apply to the special uses and saying how they meet them. Details on any outdoor storage of materials and equipment, what's going to be stored there, where it's going to be stored, the size of those areas.
I guess what could be in that narrative that would make us not pre-schedule that, or at least get it
Use
rolling?
is already on the site.
I mean, honestly, I kind of think it's a good time to get public input on this as quickly as possible. Like we said, it's an existing use. For the people that know it's there, they know it's there. There's no really close-by residences. It's other commercial uses around, right? Blooming Grove staircase and that sort of thing. So I'd be comfortable scheduling that at our meeting in April.
Your regular meeting would be April 15th.
I'm going to make
Tax day.
I'm going to make a motion that we schedule a public hearing for this application for April 15th.
Second.
FI,
At aye.
Bill and I.
thank you. So we'll get some input from the public, if any, next month. We'll look forward to your next submission, and we'll see whether we need to get that in front of the county.
Okay, so we'll look to make those plan revisions that we discussed, provide that narrative prior, in time for that meeting. Yeah, okay.
Our submission date should be, I believe it's the 28th, March 28th.
All right, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
All right. Am I by chance on for the next one too? Is it Paul Reiser? Okay.
Give me a moment to switch over. All right, this is my first time running the big screens, and I'm learning as we go. Okay, our next project is 22 Stairway.
Okay, again, for the record, David Higgins from Lang Telly Engineering and Surveying. This project is very, very similar to the project that we just discussed at 18 Stairway. The property is being used for, contractor storage. The owner did receive a violation from the town. I guess the property's been used like this for quite some time. I think the town maybe is kind of catching up on some things that maybe got missed over the years. But a violation was issued. One of those things is that we, bring the property into conformance. As I mentioned, a few minutes ago, the town board did change the GB zoning to allow the use in that district, subject to special use permit. So we have prepared the site plan. It's an amended site plan, actually, for the property. We've provided the topography, existing structure locations. There are a number of items that do cross over the property line. Basically, there's an existing storage container right now that's on the adjacent property, the 18 Stairway property. That structure is being proposed to be relocated onto the property. I know there's a shed which looks like it comes very close to the property line. I think one of Sean's comments was that because that's in the front yard, that's going to need to be removed. I don't believe that's a problem. And if the, I mean, I don't want to take Sean's thunder. There may be comments he wants to go through. We can go through those, I guess, as you want to bring them up.
Sean?
As Dave had stated, the shed down in the front there has to be relocated, as well as the concrete barriers. There's, 3 lines of them there that will also have to be removed from the front yard. Similarly to the previous application, you'll have to ensure that all the special use permit criteria requirements are met. The first one is that screening again, but similarly to the other site, this is, in my opinion, just as shielded as the other one from 17M. This site also derives access through the other lots and shared access drive to the, I guess it'd be to the west. A couple cleanup items on those easements that I noted in my comments. What else? Same thing with the organic materials, heavy equipment. Organic materials have to be 100% residential district, as well as the equipment storage has to be on paved or concrete surface. Dave, did you have any of those on this?
Yeah, again, I spoke to the owner, and he indicated that they did not have any organic materials that are being stored on the site.
Okay.
I'll have to review with him the heavy equipment and
Okay.
the concrete surface, but that I don't have the information on yet.
I think I had other couple comments on cleanup on the bulk table, but that's basically the gist of this one.
Ashley?
So, similar to the other one, I'd also ask for a special use permit narrative addressing both the general standards and the specific standards for the use. There is heavy equipment storage, so to show, I think that's labeled on the plan, show materials and the 100 setbacks that are adjacent to the residential district as well. It looked like the corner of one of those storage containers is also in the side yard setback, so if you could take a look at that.
Okay.
The one that's being, the plan said it was being removed, but then maybe the letter said it was being relocated, so I just wanted to confirm, I guess, how many in total there'll be.
Yeah, we showed, I guess, the proposed storage container. I guess I understand how that can be confusing, but the idea was we have the one storage container that's across the property line, and then within the property line, we show a proposed storage container. We're just going to basically relocate the storage container so that it's interior. And just a quick question, I think you had just mentioned, I just want to make sure that I understand. So you had said that none of the storage containers, is that also the bins, like the concrete barriers, et cetera, that might be used for, say, storing stone, et cetera? Those can't be in any of the setbacks, is that correct?
I think Sean's comment had suggested that the building inspector weigh in on that with the front yard, with those.
In my opinion, it probably does. Well, it could. So if we could I can refer it to Ben to get that clarification.
Okay. But the containers, like the storage containers, they have to be within the setbacks, they have to meet the setback requirements.
I think it's just the one I saw that the corner was just a little
Understood, okay.
in there. The application out and signed, I know it's not, so they have the one form that talks about subdivision, but usually just cross out, write what's applicable when you can, and have the application document signed as well. If you could also show the parking calculation and parking for this plan as well. It likely will require referral to the county since it does have an outdoor storage. It's clear that it's not just limited to using an structure, it has the outdoor storage.
Ellen, comments? So again, I had an opportunity to get onto this portion of the site as well quickly this evening. It's less trees, more cleared out, a couple pieces of heavy equipment on the site. I saw the containers, the Jersey barriers. Not a lot of material on the site currently. In looking at the plans, I noticed in the material storage area considered possibility for stone, topsoil, gravel, stone, et cetera. And at least in what I looked up, it appears that topsoil would be considered organic material, but I leave that to our experts for an interpretation on that. So topsoil may be an issue if it's stored on site, in relation to that setback. The fact that the paved area not only spills into the setback, which isn't necessarily an issue, but onto the adjacent property, how would that get addressed, Ashley? Even if the storage container is moved off the adjacent property, and even if the other storage container in the corner is moved out of the setback, the pavement goes right over the property line into the adjoining property.
Sure, and I don't know whether that was existing and then there was a subdivision and that came, or if it was something that was added after the fact. Whether, what's the applicant proposing? Are you proposing to keep that, remove it?
What we had shown on the map is that to be abandoned, but we didn't necessarily show it as being reclaimed. But I have spoken to the owner. He said he's going to discuss with the adjacent landowner, Mrs. Serpy, owner of 18 Stairway, and discuss the possibility of an easement for that. And again, I don't know when it was put in there. I didn't go back and check the historical records on that, but I guess that's the first stop and see if, maybe they'll grant an easement for it. If not, then we'll have to discuss, the disposition of that.
And it wouldn't likely be able to be used in, for any purpose that's related to this use, for storing anything, parking anything. Setback in addition to, so if it's clarify that you're not approving that encroachment, or you're not approving any, storage or use of that area. I mean, I think it'd be cleanest to work out whether it's an easement or blocking it off some way.
I would say in the narrative, so going on to this property, it wasn't nearly as clear to me what the nature of the business was that was occurring there, or how this area was supporting other business. The items on the property were kind of varied, and again, it wasn't clear. On the 18 Stairway property, it's Monroe Landscaping. All the equipment that I saw related to landscaping uses. I don't have a sense of that going
Well, the
onto
owner
this site.
is a contractor, Paul Reiser. I don't know if you know Paul, but we can provide more information in the narrative that outlines exactly what they're using the property for. And I think
Thank you.
Yep. Sure.
So that's kind of where we're at this point. We've got a public hearing scheduled. Oh, sorry, not for this one, for the other project. And for this one, we're going to have to get some more clarity around a few things before we move forward with a public hearing, sorry. And we'll get that, and about the Jersey barriers, the issue about the pavement that spills over, and exactly where the storage containers that are going to be moved are going to be moved to.
Does it make sense to send anything to the county? I know that you had mentioned it's got to go to the county for the 239.
So I think, but maybe the board can refer it upon receipt of the updated plan, if that makes sense?
I think we should see
Or you want to see the plan first? Okay.
yeah, I think we should see the plan, the narrative, and you get that issue addressed with Ben, and at least have an idea of what direction we're heading with the paved area.
Right, so we'll look to make that submission the same as the last one, I guess, was the 13th, is that, no, the 28th, was it? I forgot, I wrote it.
28th, sorry.
Okay,
I think
Oh, it's a Thursday? Okay, sorry, it's the 27th. Right.
I'll make sure I correct that.
Aside from us verifying that date, any other things you'd like to discuss in relation to this project?
No, I think that's it on my end, and if there's anything else that you guys have, I'll be happy to discuss it, but I think all my questions have been answered.
it's March 27th is the referral date, I think by noon on that day. Hard copy and PDF.
Okay. Hard copy and digital? Is that, got it, okay,
I don't have the exact number of hard copies that are needed, but
okay.
I'm sure he could get that to you.
Okay, right. No
Thank you
problem.
very much.
Thank you, have a great day. A great night.
Okay, with that, those are all our projects for this evening. I'm not prepared to review minutes. I haven't had an opportunity to see who was at what meetings that we could vote on those tonight. So we'll start taking a look at those at our next meeting. Any other issues for our advisors? Any issues from the board you'd like to discuss? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I have 6 other things I'd like.
Go,
I'm
well,
sorry.
please.
I second that
Let's start with
motion.
number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. The meeting is closed.